In this session, we'll be dealing with Chapter 7 on managing risk and also getting into program evaluation review technique in the appendix out of Chapter 7 as well. So enjoy the videos I present initially, and then you'll see there's a little bit about risk discussion in a more of a holistic way, and then we'll see how we specifically manage scheduling risks through some mathematical techniques.
Other replay.
This is from Harborview Hospital. You can hear the shouting with all the crowd that had gathered there. I love watching how the different slices go off, just as they said. If you numbered the slices 1 to 6, they had a particular order that they would go down by.
All the cheering you hear, I don't think people are so much cheering that the dome itself is going away, but they're cheering for this show, the sight of watching such a mammoth structure come down, and they will really cheer when they see what a great job CDI did in bringing this building down just exactly where they wanted to.
Well, it's always exciting to watch things get blown up. Obviously, that project, the demolition project, carries a high level of risk. I'm sure they had a very strong risk management plan in place for all sorts of contingencies and possibilities. Everything seemed to have gone right in that particular video, so no need to invoke any of the formal contingency plans for that project. Let's take a look at this next video.
It was always envisaged that there would be a pyramid structure left after the demolition.
Well, that particular demolition project didn't go as well as the first one. There's a significant cost now in this project going forward to try and finish the demolition. Not very safe. Probably will require specialized equipment. So if they had a risk management plan in place to maybe avoid what happened there, that would have been good. They probably, hopefully, have a risk management plan in place to address the situation they now have. Clearly, we'll see what happens when things fail in projects further along. The further along you get into a project and a risk event occurring, the less likelihood it will occur, but if it does occur, the more impact it will have on the project. This last video clip I'm showing you is of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge out in Washington State. It's a classic video that a lot of engineers get to see somewhere in the course of their engineering career, but I think it does a great job demonstrating this concept we'll see soon in the lecture regarding the likelihood of a risk event happening and the cost of that event. As you can see this by now in the video, the bridge is starting to do some very interesting things. It opened, they noticed some movement, some high winds kicked up, and ultimately some engineering concepts that really weren't worked out well at the time were newly discovered as a result of this bridge failing. And of course the ultimate cost of this risk not being recognized was replacing the bridge. Let's get into the risk management process. First, I know we know what risk is, but let's define it. It's that uncertain or chance event that planning cannot overcome or control. So when we have risks, We want to figure out a way to understand them, maybe address as many of them at the outset of the project, and have a plan for those that might come up during the course of a project. So in risk management, we're going to proactively recognize and manage those things that we can, and when they go wrong, figure out a way to minimize them, maybe even do some things before an event occurs, have some plan in place to rectify the situation or make the best of what has happened. Again, from the videos you saw earlier, as we go through the project life cycle, the chances of risks occurring decrease over time, but the cost and impact of those events, in the case those events actually take place, tend to rise. In the risk event of the demolition of that building in the UK, it's pretty clear that something happened near the end of the executing phase of the project that's going to cost a lot of money to fix. In our example of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, in that particular case, you can see that we were at the end of the project had been delivered, and yet now we're buying a new bridge. So there's a direct correlation there between the chances of the risk occurring and what the impact might be if it does occur. In the risk management process, like a lot of things in project management, we have a regimented process to follow and steps that will allow us to get through the process. So in the first step, we're going to analyze the project to identify various sources of risk. Once we know those risks, we'll do some assessment on them to figure out what happens if those risks occur, what's the probability of them occurring, and how much of it we can control. We'll loop back, we'll identify some new risks. For the ones that we've been able to do the assessment on, we'll go ahead and figure out a response. And in that response, we'll either figure out a way to reduce the possibility of that occurring, or if it does occur or something we're willing to accept that might occur, what are the plans in place if in fact that risk event does occur. We'll loop back, figure out some new risks, and then for those that we've developed a response for, we'll develop a way to control those responses. So we'll have an implementation plan, we'll have a process in place to monitor and adjust the plan when new risks come up, and we'll make sure we have a change management process in place, because one of the biggest risks on projects is changes in the project, that scope creep thing we talked about a few chapters back. And so having a change management process as part of our risk management process, we'll be able to make sure that as things pop up that need to be fixed, quality issues, we can fix them. And as customers identify things that need to be taken care of, we can address those as well through a formalized process. So let's take a look at these steps in more detail. In step one, risk identification, we can brainstorm or generate some type of a list of all the possible risks, maybe identify them through some profiling process. And the way you do that, just like you do any good brainstorming session, is maybe you look at the big issues first, and then within those issues, take a look at specific events. And we'll take a look at the next slide in a second that goes into that in more detail. After step one becomes our risk assessment, step two, and there's lots of ways to do the assessment. We can take a look at the scenarios, maybe through a questionnaire. Maybe we get a little more detailed and come up with a way to put probability and impact values on. Maybe even to the point where we've got a matrix that we can create that assesses the risk. We can use things like failure mode and effect analysis, which is a way of coming up with a quantifiable number to force rank our risk events to figure out which ones need the most management. We can use things, probability analysis, especially when we talk about managing the risk of time. So we can look at things like net present value, program evaluation review technique, decision trees, and in some cases the best we can do is just kind of talk about the risks and come up with some detailed plans based on the discussions. And so we get into that area where stuff is more semi-quantitative. So within step one, you can see the risk breakdown structure that was created for this project. And in our macro issues, we've looked at technical risks, external risks, organizational risks, and project management risks. And then within each one of those major macro risk events, we've gotten down to some specific details. And again, just like in the work breakdown structure, get down to the actionable level where we can actually make a plan for those things that pop up within our risk analysis as being ones that we need to address. Depending on the level of detail you're working on for your risk management plan, the first thing you want to do is profile out the risks and answer some questions. Things about technical requirements, design, testing. Answering these questions, these hard, fast, challenging questions, help the risk management team come up with an appropriate risk management plan.